On May 17, 2026, this year, the world woke up to an announcement from a World Health Organization. They declared a new strain of the Ebola virus dangerous. They called it a public health emergency of international concern. Yes, you heard me right. They came so short of calling it a pandemic. But what is it about this particular strain that has got the medical world on its death? What is it about this strain that has got sovereign states scrambling to close their borders? And what is it that about the strain that, as a human being, on a fundamental level, is literally making people very anxious? And the question is, what can we do to ensure we do not catch this Ebola virus? And what can we do to minimize it? It's not that far long ago. I mean, this year makes it approximately 10 years since the last strain of Ebola, since the widespread effect of Ebola, which the medical world or World Health Organization defined that strain as called the Zaire strain of Ebola. So what is it about this particular one that is causing everyone to stand on their toes? And is there ways that we can contain it? Stick around. Let's deep dive on this Ebola and see what measures we all as individuals can take, regardless of where you live. Welcome to another session of Nourish, Flourish, Vida. My name is Jen. Welcome to this session where we deep dive, we go back to the basics, we give you the information, and we hope that the information that we provide is more than sufficient, that you're able to apply it to your life. If you find any usefulness in the information that we share, please hit the like and subscribe button, and of course hit the notification button to be informed, to be made aware when next we post that video. Welcome. Now let's deep dive very quickly. 17th of May this year, the world woke up to an announcement from the World Health Organization. They declared the public health emergency of international concern. And the reason why they did this was because of a new strain of Ebola, a new strain that had presented itself vastly different from every medical tool that is out there to support, contain, treat this new strain. And this new strain is called Bundibugyo. Now, let's be very clear. Ebola, the only way Ebola is spread is not airborne. Ebola is spread via contact. You need to have a direct contact with an infected person. You need to have a direct contact with the bodily fluids of an infected person. You might ask, what are the bodily fluids? Just so that we can run around and recap. Bodily fluids includes all of the above. It includes blood, it includes semen, it includes vomit, it includes sweat, it includes urine. That is one way of getting or catching this, but the second way, it also can be through contact with contaminated objects, things like needle. But for that, we can wrap that category too and say, unless you work in the medical team, the risk of catching it through there is slightly limited, but the risk of getting it through the direct contact with somebody that infected, the bodily fluids of somebody that is infected, rates higher and applies to everybody. Now, what we know about this one? It's all began in the Ituri region in Democratic Republic of Congo. Apparently, this is a mining regional province. So you do have a lot of mining labor workers working around there. The people that had initially presented with the symptoms of the Zaire Ebola strain were treated according to what was documented medically, according to the processes, which include diagnostic, treating it, testing it, all that. But fundamentally, the result turned out negative. Yes, you heard me right. The result turned out negative. And because he slipped quietly under the radar, meant that the mortality rate from the Bundibugyo strain of Ebola is currently riding at anything up to 50%. That is the mortality rate at the moment. You see, the thing that has got the medical world on its teeth is it's not Bundibugyo is not completely new. It had initially presented back in 2007. It presented in 2012. But this is the first time that he's now copying, is presenting, and it's emulating. It's almost very similar step by step by the Zaire. The only thing is there is no vaccine to treat it. There is no there are gaps in the diagnostic processes that had already been established from the first strain of Ebola. So the only thing short that the medical world or World Health can talk about is effective 21 days isolation period if if somebody has been exposed to an individual who already has this, or a stringent hygiene process to contain it. Now we've covered the fundamental. Now let's go on straight and talk about what can we do to prevent or minimize contact of catching this particular strain. The very first thing is the common sense one: strict hygiene. Yes, we need to revive the strict hygiene that a lot of us implemented during COVID, but also any strict hygiene that I'm using COVID as a point of contact because it's not that far off. A lot of people can relate to it. Strict hygiene. You need to wash your hand. You've got the alcohol-based rubs for sanitization, but also the other one that I want to talk about is the chlorine disinfectant of surfaces around the home. We'll get back to that one. The other way and the other option that we can implement and in preventative measure is the no handshake. I know that African culture, we're very warm. It's a very warm and social thing, but given the time that we're living, and until we know much more about it, limit handshake, limit physical contact. Of course, except if you live in the same household, but if it's outside, limited. Well, the third preventative measures: say no to the bushmeat. I know it's a delicacy. If you're not African, you may not wrap your head around it. If you're not the Gen Z, but if you're the oldest, you probably can relate that the bushmeat it's a delicacy that most people can respond to. But given where the time and the space and everything that is going on regarding this Ebola, say no to bushmeat. You see, the bushmeat, the wild antelope, the bats, you name it. WHO, the World Health Organization, has labeled it. They called it a reservoir. It carries that Ebola virus. So that's another way you can limit it. Now, the fourth but not the least one is the traditional funeral rite that is often performed based across the African culture, based on custom, based on traditions and norms and value. Now, fundamentally, because of Ebola, a lot of the places where there's a traditional custom apply for funeral rites have been now taken over by the government to limit and reduce the possible spread of this new strain of Ebola. So those are the four core areas. Now, the fifth one, I will save the fifth for the last, which is using chlorine disinfectant to clean the surfaces around your home. There's a reason why I need to come to that, and I'll elaborate very much on that. But before we go into that, I want to quickly cover on another aspect, which are who are those in our society that is most vulnerable to this. I would say the first group of people in this list are nothing but the health workers. Now, anyone in the health workers that actually treat this, we see from what my research indicates is not necessarily when people present that automatically the medical world jumps in and assumes they have Ebola. No. They take preventative measures, but those preventative measures are not quite the same as the preventative measures as somebody that has been diagnosed with having the Ebola virus. So the time gap between where they, as individual health workers, need to prevent themselves, but of course, still not keep an open mind, let's use that word, until the diagnosis come back as confirmed Ebola. That gap is where a lot of health workers fall and get infected. The second group of people that we need to cover on this are, of course, the people that work in the mining area where this thing first occurred. So we've got people that are transited. You have, the mining workers in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are the most vulnerable group. But also the mining workers that have returned back home to South Sudan and to Uganda. They have migrated this strain to Uganda. But even though those are now contained, they are also the people at the risk of getting it. The other group of people that can be prone or vulnerable to getting this are the family, the caregivers or the family caregivers, those that are looking after the people that are already infected. Most likely it will be their family member or their loved ones. They are another group of people that are likely to be prone to get this. And anyone that relies on trade, your business, your trade relies on you commuting between those mining areas, or between the DRC and the rest of the world, they are another group of people that are most likely to come into contact. The high probability of getting into contact with someone from that rural area that has it is very high. Those are the people. Now, let's look at what can I do to prevent it. The first one, which I call the common sense, is regular, stringent, strictly washing your hands. Your hands, sanitizing, hygiene, washing your hands constantly. Of course, that comes into play. If you've been indoors all day, that's a lower risk of, you've not been exposed to outside, you've not mingled with people outside. But if you've been in and out, if you've gone to work and you rely on not working from home, or your job doesn't entail you working from home, that you need to go out, or you have to drop off the kids to school and you bring them back, there are 1,001 reasons why we leave our homes every day. Now, that is where it becomes critical and paramount. Now, when you do come in, you need to advisable, recommended strict washing of hand. If you are outside, of course, we covered about no physical handshake, no handshake to minimize it. Again, use the alcohol sanitation rubs. Now, we've already covered the other preventative measures, which we did talk about, we've covered hygiene, and then we talked about no touching. Now let me deep dive very quickly. Let's cover the one that the chlorine disinfectant. Now some people be saying, is there anything, before you dash off going to look for chlorine disinfectant, I want to introduce a household cleaning item that already has this. Yes, it's none other but your household bleach. I know that people get confused. Some people call bleach chlorine, and some people call it non-chlorine. But your household bleach is technically what is called as chlorine bleach, because it has chlorine in it. You see, chlorine is not something you go off and buy, of course, unless you work in the chemical world. You're more than likely not to encounter chlorine, because it's a highly toxic gas that is yellow. It's yellow greenish in color. To get chlorine actually has the chemical life. For those people that study chemistry, the chemical compounds of chlorine is made up of sodium, is made up of oxygen, is made up of chlorine atoms. Household bleach has a key ingredient they call sodium hypochlorite. To make chlorine safe, in order to use it in a household bleach, the gas is actually passed through a solution of water and caustic soda to arrive at a stable liquid. It's that liquid that is included in your household bleach. Now, before we deep dive on bleach and I start running before my mouth, I need to call out a few things that you need to understand about bleach. When you're using household bleach, for the love of Christ, do not mix or dilute your bleach with anything other than water. And I explain the rationale behind it. Most household bleach already has up to 9%. The volume tends to vary between 5 to 9% of sodium hypochlorite, which is the key ingredient. This sodium hypochlorite, I've already explained that this is where the liquid chlorine is being included as one of the key ingredients. Because what generally happens is, when you clean with bleach around the house, or when you pour bleach, most of us are very much aware that bleach whitens, it cleans. It is the chlorine. When you use bleach or you pour it on a surface in the home, it activates the chlorine. It's the chlorine that then does the whitening process of anything that is poured on. But there are a few things before I deep dive which I must pull your ears to, because one of it can lead to fatality. When using household bleach for anything, only use it with water. Do not mix, do not add things like your ammonia or acid like vinegar. I'm talking about even as simple as your apple cider vinegar, as simple as your lemon juice. These are acid. The reason why it's a no-no, and I will keep highlighting it's a no-no, when you mix it with ammonia or acid, you are releasing a highly toxic chlorine gas. That gas, when inhaled, is fatal. So especially if you're listening to me and you're thinking, well, before I run out and get it, for the love of Jesus Christ, and I'm pleading with everybody, when you get your household bleach, please only mix or dilute with water, nothing else, to be on the safe side. That's rule number one. Of course, it goes without saying, bleach is not to be ingested. You cannot drink it, you cannot take it in. Ingested means to take it, to open your and you swallow it. It's a no-no. The third but not the least, you cannot use it on anything that is non-porous. So your unsealed wood, some wood products, whether your wooden furniture, your wooden dining table, your wooden kitchen surface, some of it is untreated. It's against the rule to use it on that. That's one. Two, it is best advised, do not use it on your rug, on your carpet. It's a very powerful cleansing agent. It is best used not to use it on it. And three, do not use it on natural stone. Yes, you heard me right. Now that I've covered the three no-nos when you have to use household bleach, let me get into how you can prepare it. Now let's cover how we can prepare our own household, your own particular household chlorine disinfectant using the household bleach. The first things first is the dilution. You do not pour household bleach, you do not pour water into household bleach. It is always recommended that you pour the bleach into the water. Preferably, it's better to go with a room temperature water or cold water. Do not use hot water. See, the hot water can force the chlorine in that bleach to be released very quickly, and you get irritant fumes. So that's the strong smell. Some people can take it, some people can't take it. But in order to avoid that, always pour your bleach into cold water or room temperature water. And if you're asking what is room temperature water, because on this channel we never assume, you need to put your finger. If you can take it, then it's more than likely it's room temperature. If you know you cannot put your finger into that water before you pour it, then it's more likely it is hot water. So do not use that. The second thing is, please check that your household bleach has up to 8% sodium hypochlorite. It is important you're using a household bleach. You're not using one of those fancy non-splash or non-other thing. It may not have that active ingredient. You really want a household bleach that has an active ingredient of the high sodium hypochlorite, or the one that physically says chlorine bleach, because there are other options for those people that are irritated, that cannot stand the smell of bleach. There are the non-chlorine bleaches, such as the sodium peroxide, the sodium bicarbonate. Those ones may be applicable to you. If you fall into the category of those that think, I really don't like bleach, or I don't like the strong smell of bleach, there are people that, because they have young children at home, infants, they generally stay away. Or if you're asthmatic, then more than likely explore the non-chlorine bleach. I know for me at home, the Dettol falls into one of those. It is also very powerful. So maybe it's another way to apply, because the active ingredient in those isn't the sodium hypochlorite, but it's actually the sodium percarbonate, which is completely different, but it will do the same. Now, the other preparation, the third but not the least preparation that I need to cover, it's relating that if you actually are the type that some people prefer to use the bleach straight up, and others prefer to dilute, depending on your flavor and your taste. But if you fall into the category, or you are the type that like to buy the big volume and then you dilute it as you need it, it is best recommended that you do prepare a batch every 24 hours. You see, because the batch that you prepared for 48 hours, chlorine tends to lose its efficacy the longer it stays, the effectiveness, and what you're relying on it. The reason why even the World Health Organization calls about effective strict control of anything up to 0.05% of a chlorine disinfectant is because of how powerful it is, that it can kill that resistant Ebola virus. I was going to call it bacteria. Jet, wake up, virus. So it's better and it's recommended. Prepare a fresh batch every 24 hours. So that means do not stockpile and prepare batches that you think can last you a whole month. It's better to prepare it every 24 hours. Now that we've covered the rules, the do's and don'ts of when using household bleach, and now that we've covered how you can prepare it, what are the steps to prepare it, now let's talk about how you can then use it. First things first, when you're using it, it's important that your surfaces, I'm talking about, because even if you're living in the West or you're living back home, and especially we do our orders, when you go in, come out, it is best to clean your surfaces first. So you do not apply your household bleach, or I would refer to this as your chlorine disinfectant that is made out of your household bleach. It is better and is recommended not to use it straight on surfaces that already have dirt, that already have oil, that already have food spills. It's not the best way. And the reason why is those surfaces, they reduce the effectiveness. If you go straight and use it to clean your dirty surfaces, it will reduce the effectiveness of the chlorine of the chlorine ingredient, because the first thing chlorine will be coming into contact is the dirt, the oils, the household spills, the things around the house. So it's always best to scrub and clean your dirty surfaces, particularly around the kitchen, around this other. You clean it, do that with soap and water. Your detergent, wipe everywhere clean first before you go ahead and then wipe with your chlorine disinfectant. That is the right and recommended way to do it when you're using a chlorine disinfectant in the house. The second option, or not the option, the second thing on the list when using your household disinfectant in the house, now that you've cleaned it, it is the up to 10 minutes factor. That's what I call it. You see, when you've cleaned your surfaces around the home, and then you've gone ahead to clean again with your disinfectant, the 10 minutes factor kicks in. It requires you need to leave that chlorine disinfectant on the surfaces for anything up to 10 minutes, because it is the recommended guard. That is how long it requires to actually kill off any Ebola virus that has come into contact. It's not the case of I've cleaned my surface area very quickly. I go ahead and I clean with my chlorine disinfectant that I've made out of my household bleach, and then quickly within the next few seconds you go on a month. No, that's not the key thing. You clean the dirt area, you clean the surfaces first. We clean off any dirt, any germs, any oil spills. We all know it. I don't want to go through, but the first wipe is clean to get rid of your dirt, to get rid of the oils, to get rid of anything. Then the second wipe is with your chlorine disinfectant. When you do that, time it, leave it for up to 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, then you can come and wipe it and clean it off. It is important you leave it for up to 10 minutes because it is the recommended time to be able to kill off this particular strain of Ebola virus. The third, but not the least, now we know not all people, not everyone is the same. We're all different. We're all made differently. The reason why I'm highlighting, some people cannot stand the smell of bleach. I personally, I love the smell of bleach, but not everybody is like me. Other people are concerned because of their children, so they wouldn't want to leave it. And some people have asthma and the others, so they don't like the smell of strong bleach. And the general guiding principle, if you do not, I cannot stand the smell of a strong perfume, eau de parfum, or eau de toilette, then it's more than likely you may not like the smell of bleach. If that is the case and it applies to you, my recommended way to bridge it is to say, do this cleanup at night when everybody has gone to bed, when your children have gone to bed, or you put the kids to bed, or just do it as the last thing before you retire for the night. Because when you do it, more than likely you're not going to be in and out of those vicinity. You don't have to access it. And if if you have kids at home, you are not concerned that your kids are touching things that have the like you've already cleaned with chlorine bleach. Secondly, or fundamentally, if you think I'm not a chlorine person, I rather stick, then explore the non-chlorine option that I did mention earlier on. And then the third and final option is, we already covered it slightly earlier, is ventilation. Very important. If you do happen to do your surface clean, or you're doing this cleaning during the day, it is very important you ventilate afterwards, because after you've left it for 10 minutes, then go ahead and clean it with a clean wipe cloth to get rid of all the chlorine disinfectant that you may have at the house, which may be particularly important, especially if you have kids around the house. Let me cover a general guiding principle, because key thing number one is, if possible, use gloves. Use gloves, or use household rubber gloves, or the nitrate surgical gloves, or the nitrate gloves. Depending on which one, it's probably best to use it when you're preparing your solution, your disinfectant solution. Secondly, and this is one, it's best to do this not straight with your office clothes or your outing clothes, or you've come home and you think, let me quickly do this. It's probably best not to do this. Why? Because any splash will leave a permanent stain. Yes, so advisable, wear your old clothes or wear house clothes. Wear something that I'm wearing that if it stains, it's a household clothes. It's not your work clothes. It's not your function clothes. It's not neither of the above. It's very important. Now let's talk about the last but not the least. Wash your gloves hand. Wash your hands that are, your gloved hands first. Wash that with soap and water. Afterwards, strip off the gloves, then wash your hands with soap and water. Let me reiterate, just because we can make a chlorine disinfectant from a household bleach, I would reiterate, household bleach are not your mate. They are not to be trampled upon. Let me sing it again. When using your household bleach, do not call it a small boy. Do not just call it your age mate, and definitely do not mix it with anything other than cold or warm water, cold or room temperature water. Do not be tempted to help the bleach by adding freshly squeezed lemon, or you add your apple cider vinegar, or you add anything that contains ammonia. You are setting and opening the chapter for something that can fundamentally end and lead to fatality. Because doing any of this, adding ammonia, adding acid, your lemon, your vinegar to it, it will definitely lead to the chlorine gas being released, and it is highly toxic and fatal. Around the world, a lot of sovereign states have taken measures to restrict and minimize the spread of Ebola within their countries. Last week, Saturday, African Centers for Diseases Control and Prevention issued out and called out the 10 African countries that are most at risk from Ebola new strain, the Bundibugyo virus, the strain of that particular strain. They have highlighted 10 countries because this came out on the back of one of the epicenters in the key area in DRC, that is where it's originated from. It transpired that family members of one of the patients had gone ahead and destroyed the facility, and as a result 18 people had already left that facility. So on the back of that, the African Centers for Diseases Control and Prevention have called out 10 countries, and I'm going to list those 10 countries that are at most risk at the moment. Angola, the Central African Republic, Zambia, Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya, South Sudan. So as of Saturday, the 23rd, those are the countries that they've called out as being at most risk. Now, going forward, if you're looking to travel to United States, please be aware that they have closed their borders to non-US citizens who have been exposed, or you have been in this region, in the DRC, in South Sudan, in Uganda. If you're coming from those areas and you have been exposed, they more than likely will turn you back. That bar or non-entry seems to be extended to permanent green card holders. So that's just something to be aware of. Secondly, there's a strict mandatory 21 days isolation period. Particularly if you're a US citizen and you've arrived, you have to undergo the 21 days isolation period, where you're expected to regularly take your temperature and report that. It must be effective. The other countries alongside is also US have issued a do not travel, raised the level to level 4, which is effectively do not travel. Likewise, UK have also issued do not travel to those regions. Singapore and Taiwan has effectively implemented the 21 days isolation period. It is mandatory, particularly if you're coming from those areas. And we'll keep you abreast as we know more, we share more. But for now, folks, that's all we've got. We hope that you found some usefulness in this information we shared. Like I requested, if you found anything useful at all, or if you think about any topic you want me to deep dive to, for us to go back to the basis, please let me know in the comment. But in the meantime, hit the like, the subscribe, and turn on your notification button. I'll see you in the next video. Till next time, keep living nourishing, keep flourishing, and of course, keep living life. God bless.